Hello, everyone. My name's Nick Saville, and I'm the Secretary General of ALTE, the Association of Language Testers in Europe. This year marks the 30th anniversary of the foundation of ALTE, and to celebrate this historic milestone, we've released a publication documenting the history of the association, which I'm delighted to say is now available and is free to view and download from the website. I've been privileged to be involved in the story from the very beginning, and so I'm pleased to be ushering in a new era with the publication of this volume. The booklet, as you see on the screen, outlines the evolution of the association and provides insights from members, both past and present. These reflections describe the extensive projects and other collaborative activities that ALTE has been involved in over the years. These include over 60 official meetings and larger international conferences, which have been hosted in 40 locations all across Europe. There's also information about our projects and interest groups that are perhaps less widely known to the public, as well as the training courses on a very large range of subjects related to language testing that ALTE has been involved in and held over the years. 30 years ago, Europe and the world was at a poignant moment in history, where walls were coming down and new opportunities for education and mobility were being created, not least in language education. So it was against this backdrop that ALTE came into existence, thanks mainly to the initial vision of a very small number of people, and then the enthusiasm and energy of an expanding group of participants over many years. Nowadays, ALTE is a well-established INGO with a reputation for leadership in multilingualism, language learning, and of course, assessment. It seems today that the world is again at another poignant moment, with new opportunities for collaboration being created, this time by the strange circumstances we're now experiencing. The use of digital technology has been steadily growing for more than a decade, particularly with the use of smartphones and tablets and the like. But it's now come into its own, enabling us to stay in touch and to implement new ways of working. It seems very appropriate, therefore, in this pivotal moment, to look back at the last 30 years, but also to contemplate what the next 30 years might bring in a world of education and in language assessment in particular. In 1809, just over 30 years ago, Michael Milanovic from UCLES, now Cambridge Assessment English, visited the University of Salamanca in Spain, and the seeds of the collaborative activity were sown there. Contact was soon established with other organizations that were teaching and assessing their own languages, and the Goethe Institute, the Alliance Française, the University of Foreigners in Perugia, the University of Lisbon, and the Generalitat de Catalunya all showed enthusiasm for getting together to talk about the possible ways of working together. That's a picture there of the Generalitat in Catalonia. And I can still remember the inaugural meeting of what was to become ALTE that took place there in October 1990, hosted by the Generalitat itself in their beautiful medieval buildings. And I recall it was ably chaired by Carles Duarte Montserrat, who has become a renowned poet and author, writing in his own language. The original aims of the collaboration were threefold: to establish common levels of proficiency in order to promote the transnational recognition of language certification across Europe, to establish common professional standards for all stages of the language testing process, and more generally to share knowledge and know-how in the field of language learning and assessment. Because back then, language testing was only really emerging as a field of academic study and of practice in its own right. And I would say that these three aims are still very much at the heart of ALTE's mission today. The first step was to document all the institution's current exams and to map them against each other and to put them in a grid called the ALTE framework, with the exams compared to each other and categorized by level of language proficiency. These were the original ALTE levels, which ultimately fed into the development of the CFR, the Council of Europe's framework of reference. Here's an interesting picture, well, at least I think so. It shows me explaining the framework, that very early version of levels, to the Duke of Edinburgh on his visit to Cambridge in 1993. Also in the picture is Dr. Peter Hargreaves, who was the director of UCL's EFL and my boss at the time, sadly passed away now. Nowadays, as you can see on the screen, the framework contains exams of member organizations compared and categorized by CFR level, but also a key aspect of this framework is the ALTE Q mark, which now applies to examinations which have been successfully audited using ALTE's Code of Practice Quality Management System and procedures for auditing, as we call them. The examinations using the Q mark have all demonstrated that they achieve acceptable standards of quality for their intended purposes and their uses. The intention is not to make everything exactly the same, but to guarantee that each examination which is on the framework is demonstrably fit for its intended purpose. This approach has not only brought about higher levels of assessment literacy amongst ALTE members and affiliates, but I think we've also been able to see measurable improvements in the quality of the exams and other assessments that are offered by ALTE members and others nowadays who make use of the ALTE approach. The ALTE Q mark is actually now widely recognized and is looked out for by test users seeking some guarantees of quality and high standards. And that's what it looks like. A preoccupation with quality and the understanding of key concepts needed to align multiple language assessments within a common framework continues to be, as I mentioned, very much at the center of ALTE's work, particularly through ALTE's special interest groups, or SIGs. The original framework, which predated the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, continues within the Council of Europe context. And it's true to say that over the years, starting from that original ALTE framework, ALTE has been able to make a strong contribution to the development of the CFR itself and subsequently to other work which has been associated with that over the last 20 years. So since then, I would say, since those early days, close collaboration with the Council of Europe has continued, and there have been several notable projects which have been jointly carried out over the years, including the Manual for Test Development and Examining to accompany the CFR. And more recently, these have been supplemented by others. And recently, in the last 2 or 3 years, perhaps a bit longer, ALTE members and ALTE itself have contributed to the development of the companion volume to the CFR. On the screen now, you can see a range of publications which are now available and which are all referenced on our website and can be downloaded free of charge. So back to the history itself. There are many interesting stories and tales to be told in this book. And if you're interested, please do go to the website and download your free copy. It's clear in reading through it that really quite a lot has happened in the 30 years. But I would say the key thing that's kept ALTE going is the human factor, the personal connections and shared willingness to collaborate between the people involved. Nowadays, including organizations and individual participants who come together from all over the globe. But it's also clear that the world we live in now, as I mentioned before, is significantly different to the world of 1990 and more rapidly changing perhaps in the last few months than we'd expected. But over the last few years, we've been looking to the future and thinking about how things might be different and how we could adapt to the changing environment. And that's why we're using the opportunity of this important milestone of 2020 to reconsider how we can work differently and focus on what the world of assessment will be like as we go forward. A few years ago, following a period of review and consultation with members and other stakeholders, ALTE completed a decision or came to a decision to change its constitution and to move forward in a more expansive and more collaborative way. And last year, 2019, we completed the transformation of our legal status and management structure that will enable us to take on this more inclusive and even more collaborative role. So we have moved from our original status as an association that was constituted under European regulations all those years ago, that was known as an EEIG, or European Economic Interest Grouping. And we've now moved to become a charity, a charitable incorporated organization, or CIO. And as I said, not only does this enable wider participation within ALTE, but it also allows for new types of membership and other forms of collaboration more widely, both within and beyond Europe. ALTE members are now looking forward to discussing these opportunities, and particularly we're focusing our attention this year in light of the current challenges posed by the COVID-19 crisis. Our continued collaboration and cooperation is crucial, not only as a response to these difficult circumstances, but to ensure that we take advantage of the opportunities for designing the future. In ALTE, we are seeing a new or renewed focus on a number of topic areas, some of which are shown on the screen. A renewed focus on how learning and assessment can be better integrated, what we call learning-oriented assessment, with a greater focus on formative functions of assessment carried out in classrooms, as well as using more formal examinations. There's a continued focus on plurilingualism and how that relates to mediation, especially with the publication of the companion volume to the CFR. And above all, the use of technology in society and the realities we see around us of what's called the fourth industrial revolution, the era of data and devices. So where does that leave language testing or language assessment more widely? What might our member institutions need to do differently over the next 30 years, making sure that setting standards and sustaining diversity still remain as important as ever they were? I hope the answers to these questions, and of course many others, will be written up in new chapters of our history by other people in the future. In the meantime, I look forward very much to meeting up with colleagues and friends again, face to face, and to reflecting on these challenges together. So just a few quick reminders to wrap up. Don't forget to check out the history book online if you want to, and to look out for other ALTE events which are coming up. In April this year, we had been planning to hold our 7th international conference in Madrid, with co-hosts the Instituto Cervantes, one of our long-standing members from Spain. Unfortunately, like so many others, we've had to postpone our event. But the good news is the whole thing has been shifted forward 1 year, postponed, but taken forward until April next year, 2021, with the same themes and plenary speakers and more or less the same program. We're now, of course, looking forward to meeting everyone in Madrid next year at that time. You can check the website there. That's the logo, which shows the lovely Cervantes building, where we will be holding our gala reception next April. In the meantime, throughout 2020, we're organizing web-based activities and planning for online events. And we'll be telling you more about that as we go along. Also, look out for more short videos of this kind from ALTE members and colleagues. I've recorded one about the international conference itself and the themes in that. And 2 other colleagues, Valdec Martinuk and Lorenzo Roca, have recorded 2 more. Valdec talks about the launch of ALTE's updated Principles of Good Practice, which we had planned to launch and talk about during the conference. And Lorenzo updates us on the very important work of the special interest group that covers language assessment in the context of migration and integration, or LAMI. So please do check the website for more updates and details about our events. And of course, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. So thanks for your attention. Stay safe. See you soon, and bye for now.